The morning sun cast a golden glow over the schoolyard, but all I could feel was the weight in my chest as I pulled up to the drop-off zone. Logan and Ava were already bouncing in their seats, chattering about who they hoped would be in their class and what snacks they'd packed for lunch. Their excitement should have lifted me, but instead, it only deepened the knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach. I knew she'd be here. Natalie, my ex-wife. The woman who once whispered forever into my ear but now wielded every word like a weapon. And with her, inevitably, Ryan, the man who had stepped into my shoes without ever bothering to walk in them. Just thinking about facing them again made my jaw tighten. As we got out of the car, I caught sight of them across the parking lot. Natalie's smile was too wide, her laughter too bright, especially when she saw me. She waved with exaggerated cheer, and I gave a polite nod in return, forcing a smile I didn't feel. Ryan stood beside her, arms crossed, that same smug look on his face he always wore when he thought he was winning something. "Dad, can you sign my permission slip?" Ava asked, tugging at my sleeve. I crouched down, pulling a pen from my pocket, trying to focus on her small hand gripping mine rather than Natalie's whispering tone as she spoke to another parent nearby. "She's doing it again," Logan muttered under his breath. He wasn't blind to it either. The way she'd casually mention how busy her life was now, how much better things were since the divorce, always just loud enough for me to hear. It was subtle, insidious. A slow drip of doubt meant to make me question my place in our children's lives. I swallowed hard and handed Ava back the slip. "You two have an amazing day, okay? First day jitters are normal." They hugged me tightly, and for a moment, everything else faded away. But as soon as they ran off toward the school entrance, I turned back and locked eyes with Natalie. She gave me a saccharine smile and whispered something to Ryan that made him chuckle. That was the last straw. Driving away from the school, I replayed the encounter over and over in my mind. Her words, his smirk, it was more than just personal spite. It was deliberate. They wanted me to feel small, to believe I was losing not just in life, but in front of my own kids. Well, I wasn't going to let that happen anymore. For too long, I had let their games get under my skin. I told myself it didn't matter what they thought, that I was above it all. But the truth was, silence had only emboldened them. If they wanted to play dirty, I had to change the rules of the game. And then, almost ironically, I received a call from my business partner. We had just closed a major deal, one of the biggest in months. Growth was accelerating faster than we'd anticipated. Investors were showing interest. For once, things were finally going right. I laughed bitterly, imagining Natalie's reaction if she knew the truth. She and Ryan had convinced themselves I was floundering, that the divorce had ruined me professionally. Nothing could be further from the truth. But even as I celebrated this success, a new unease settled in. I started noticing strange patterns, emails flagged from unfamiliar addresses, questions from clients that seemed oddly specific about internal company operations. Someone was digging, and it didn't take long to trace the breadcrumbs back to Ryan. He wasn't just content with psychological warfare, he was trying to sabotage me professionally. That realization lit a fire in me. I couldn't afford to sit back while someone tried to tear apart everything I'd built. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I fought back. I began documenting everything. Every suspicious email, every unusual inquiry, every red flag. I reached out to trusted contacts, quietly gathering intel on Ryan's business dealings. What I found was worse than I imagined: backdoor deals, falsified reports, even attempts to poach key clients from my company under false pretenses. He wasn't just jealous, he was desperate. Armed with evidence, I took the next step. I called in a favor from an old investor, someone with enough clout to make a real difference. Within weeks, I secured a massive investment that not only stabilized my company, but catapulted it forward. The rumors Ryan had spread about my supposed financial downfall crumbled overnight. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. At the next PDA meeting, where I knew Natalie and Ryan would be, I stood up and announced the news. The room erupted in applause, but I kept my eyes fixed on them. The color drained from Natalie's face, and Ryan looked like he might choke on his own arrogance. I didn't gloat, I didn't need to. The truth spoke for itself. Soon after, whispers began circulating about Ryan's shady behavior. Clients distanced themselves. Partnerships dissolved. His reputation, once polished and respected, began to crack under the pressure of exposure. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding trust within my own network, forging stronger relationships based on integrity and mutual respect. Surprisingly, Natalie reached out a few weeks later, suggesting we talk. She sounded different, less venomous, more cautious. She wanted a truce, she said. Peace, for the kids' sake, of course. But I wasn't interested in sweeping things under the rug. Not anymore. I needed her to acknowledge the role she played, the damage she helped inflict. And for once, she didn't argue. She simply listened. Then came the final confrontation. Ryan and I met face to face alone. No audience, no cameras, just two men standing on opposite sides of a battlefield neither of us had expected to fight on. I laid out the evidence, point by point, watching his confidence erode with every word. When I demanded a public acknowledgement of his actions, he hesitated. But in the end, cornered and out of options, he agreed. It wasn't about revenge. It was about restoring balance, about proving, to myself, if no one else, that I wouldn't be erased or undermined by people who mistook cruelty for strength. As the dust settled, so did my life. Logan and Ava noticed the shift in me. I was calmer, lighter, more present. They didn't ask what changed, but I could see it in their eyes. They felt it too. The tension that used to hang around us like a fog had lifted. Looking back, I realized something important. My victory hadn't come from exposing Ryan or disarming Natalie. It came from reclaiming my power, from choosing to rise above the chaos and build something unshakable. My business, my family, my peace of mind, they were mine again. And this time, no one was going to take them from me. As the seasons changed, so did the rhythm of my days. The chaos that once defined my life began to fade into the background, replaced by a steady, grounding presence I hadn't felt in years. Mornings became less about bracing for battle and more about savoring the quiet moments, Logan humming to himself as he tied his shoes, Ava scribbling her name on the corner of every drawing she brought home, the way they both looked at me now with trust and comfort rather than lingering uncertainty. I had fought hard, not just against Ryan and Natalie, but against the part of myself that used to believe I wasn't enough. That voice had grown quieter, drowned out by the reality of what I'd built, a thriving business, a stable home, and a relationship with my kids that was stronger than ever. Still, healing didn't happen overnight. There were days when old wounds flared, when I caught myself second-guessing whether I was doing things right as a father or a businessman. But I learned to sit with those doubts without letting them take over. I started seeing a therapist, not because I thought something was wrong with me, but because I finally understood that taking care of my mind was just as important as taking care of everything else. Work became more than just a distraction. It turned into a source of real pride again. With the new investment secured, we expanded our team and launched a product line we'd been developing for months. It was ambitious, risky even, but it paid off faster than any of us expected. Our client base tripled in 6 months, and I found myself signing contracts that 5 years ago would have felt like dreams. But this time, success tasted different. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving to myself that resilience is its own kind of strength. The legal stuff dragged on longer than I wanted. Ryan's public apology came in the form of an email forwarded to several key clients, clarifying the misinformation he had spread about my company. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough. His reputation continued to unravel, and eventually, he moved out of state. I never saw him again after that final meeting. Natalie, too, faded from the daily drama. We settled into a civil co-parenting routine, the kind where conversations stayed focused on schedules and school events instead of old grudges. She never fully admitted fault, but I stopped needing her to. Letting go of the need for validation was one of the most freeing decisions I ever made. One evening, while walking through the backyard with Logan and Ava chasing fireflies, I paused to look at the house, the same one I'd bought when we first got married, the one I fought so hard to keep. It had seen so many versions of me. The young husband who thought love could fix anything, the broken man left behind after the divorce, and now, the father rebuilding his life piece by piece. It struck me, then, how much I had changed. Not because of what happened, but because of how I chose to respond. I had spent so long feeling like a victim of circumstance, waiting for things to get better on their own. But real change only came when I decided to stop reacting and start acting, when I took control of my narrative instead of letting others write it for me. That night, as I tucked Ava into bed, she looked up at me and said, "You seem happy, Dad." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "I am," I whispered. "I really am." And I meant it, because happiness wasn't about having everything perfect. It was about finding peace in the mess, strength in the struggle, and joy in the little victories. And for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be.